Today, we're going to meet Doug Fath and talk about his life and how real estate has allowed him to have the freedom and abundance to live life on his terms. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is financial success to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom. And Doug Fath embodies that. As you listen, you'll hear certain behaviors and choices that Doug makes to take control of his life. He's always intentional in his choices, setting goals, and he's always learning. We also talk about investing in real estate and how we look at deals. Without any further delay, let's get started. Hello, Doug Fath. Welcome to Richer Soul. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much. Great to be here, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So before we get started and talk about real estate, I just want to explore a little bit of your past. And before we even do that, just let people get to know you. Congratulations, first off. New father, right? Beautiful little daughter, Jade, just recently born. How is that going?
Yes, that is going amazing. I am absolutely loving fatherhood. Still adjusting to, having it all work, but it's just amazing. It's like no matter what's going on business-wise, coming home and, seeing my wife and my daughter just lights me up and brings a smile to my face like nothing else. It's amazing.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're able to do that. So let's take a step back. You went to college at NYU, correct?
Correct.
And what were you studying there, and what was your vision going to college and what you were thinking of coming out of college?
Sure. So going to college, I was playing sports. So I actually played basketball at NYU my freshman year and realized I wasn't going to make it to the NBA. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And I wanted to get involved with business, even though I had no business experience whatsoever. And my plan was to work on Wall Street as an investment banker. And we had an alumni come back and tell us about his job and all the money he was making, but how he literally had no life. He was working, 18, 20 hours a day. And I said, I want to make money, but I want to have a life as well. And so that kind of opened the door looking for another solution. And I started reading a lot of books on investing and entrepreneurship. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was one of those books that was sort of like the first book that opened my eyes to another way. And the one thing out of all the books that I read, the common theme was do something that you're passionate about, do something that you enjoy doing. And I had played sports my entire life. I always wore sports jerseys. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start a sports apparel business with not even the intention to make money with it, but because it tells you 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? So I didn't think I was going to be super successful, but let me figure out business. And I lucked out. I had the right product at the right time because I got involved with the sports apparel right before it got really big in the hip hop community with the throwback jerseys. So I placed an order on my credit card. Before the bill came due, I was sold out and, I just reordered. And so I was able to parlay the sports apparel company into getting involved in real estate. And the year before my senior year, I took the year off from school with the intention of selling the sports apparel company and getting involved into real estate. So I invested in my education, read every book, went to tons of seminars. I found some coaches and mentors that were doing what I wanted to do. And long story short, that's where I got to really get hands-on experience with real estate. And at the end of that year, I sold my sports apparel companies, went back to school, bought my first 4 properties. And then when I graduated, just continued doing that. And I've been doing it ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. Clearly a line of success. So before we get on to real estate, there's a couple things in there that are quite interesting. You went to college with a goal, and that was to go to Wall Street. Why Wall Street? Finance.
Make a lot of money. That was the, as I said, I when I stopped playing basketball at NYU, I'm like, geez, I'm going to school here. I'm paying a lot of money to go to school here. And well, I better make a lot of money. And so at the time, the investment banking job, that was the hot job, the high paying thing. So I said, okay, well, I'll do that.
And then you said no, because was that intentional, or in the sense that, was it accidental that you found out what the lifestyle was, or was it somewhat intentional of you trying to learn what the life of an investment banker was like?
Probably a little bit of both, but it was definitely intentional. I mean, I've always been a goal setter, and then look to see the best way that I could achieve those goals. And so I've always been of the belief, if there's something you want to do, you want to find people that are already doing that and learn from them. So when there was an opportunity to learn from someone that was doing what I thought I wanted to do, I was there.
And that's something a lot of people don't do. They don't actually investigate before they take that step. They go to college, they get in a job, and then they go, how did I get here? I didn't realize this was what it was all about. So congratulations on, at a young age, thinking through that and making that intentional step.
Thank you.
And so then you pivoted. Well, you mentioned the clothing company.
Mm-hmm.
And so you started a business, you just to try it so you could learn the steps. You weren't worried about making money. You were just, I guess, more interested in doing the business. And then why didn't you stay in it? Why'd you get out?
So again, I was fortunate that I got into it at the right time, in the sense it had taken off. And why I got out was I knew sports apparel would always be around, but at that time, the authentic sports jerseys, it was so crazy. It was a bit of a fashion fad. And I knew that craziness wasn't going to last forever. And so right before I took the year off that year, I had to invest a bunch more money, back into the business if I was really going to sort of take things to the next level. And I didn't think it made sense to invest a whole lot more time and money into a business that I didn't think was going to continue to grow. I thought it had a little bit more growth, but it was sort of reaching the peak, in my opinion.
And we'll probably talk about this further as we go along, but what signals do you look for? How do you realize when a business is peaking or about to grow and explode? Like, how do you look at a market and say, there's opportunity here, or this market's saturated, it's time to pivot and get out?
So there's certainly technical indicators that you can get to that and are a lot more applicable to real estate. At that time, I was a college student with my first business, so there were no technical indicators, right? I was just in the business, running the business, working the business, and just observing what was going on. And just the market was so crazy. And you just get a sense. I mean, I feel like, whatever market you're in, or if you're in a certain career, if like you're in tune with what's going on in the market, you kind of have a sense like things are going crazy. This isn't going to last forever. And so I think it was just being aware and seeing what was going on in the market. I mean, these jerseys were selling for $250, $400 a pop, and they were like flying off the shelves. That just wasn't going to last forever.
It takes great insight to walk away from that, because throughout history, every time we have a bubble, people don't think like that. They go the opposite direction. Oh, this is going to keep going and going from back in, 400 years ago with tulip bulbs in Holland to the internet craze to everything. It seems most people, when they see a frenzy, run in, and you're smart enough to run out. So again, congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. But admittedly, the sort of that, how that happened, I'd say it was probably just more luck and intuitiveness than anything else. I would say now I'm a lot more intentional about that and depth at looking at some of those things. But, I was certainly fortunate to look. I think luck plays a role in things. And I also believe that luck doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? There's that acronym, luck is laboring under correct knowledge. So yes, circumstances in the outside world will certainly impact that. But if you're doing what you need to do, busting your butt, getting educated and being smart about things, you can take advantage of it.
Luck finds you.
Exactly.
Very true. So you're in college, you paid a lot of money, and somehow you were able to afford buying real estate. Yeah. So how do you get money to get started buying real estate?
So, and this is such a cliche, but it's so true. Like the corny expression, and I'll preface it that way, but it's where there's a will, there's a way. So, I mean, I remember when I was first starting out to get started in real estate, everyone's like, oh, you need money to get started in real estate. You can't do that. And talking with family members, people that, loved me, that were, really close to me. And look, those people just wanted what was best for me. And in their eyes, they thought it was risky. It was like, no, Doug, you should go to Wall Street, get the, high paying job and this and that. But that just wasn't what I wanted anymore. So I lost my train of thought there, Rocky.
Where'd you get the money?
Where'd I get the money? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. And again, this goes back to getting educated and doing your due diligence and doing the work to come up with a smart strategy. So my strategy was to acquire properties that needed work, that I could renovate the properties, improve them, and improve the value of the properties so that the increase in value would allow me to then go to the bank and get a loan and essentially recoup the initial money that I put down.
So how did you get the initial money, though?
Well,
What's that?
Yeah, I know I didn't answer that yet, and I'm getting there. But the reason why I'm prefacing this is it's super important was because my strategy, wherever I got that money from, which we're going to get to in a second, I set it up in a way that I knew within 6 to 12 months, I could get that money back.
So you went in with a short-term strategy. I'm not borrowing this for 30 years or 15 years. I'm borrowing this and I'm going to recoup it quickly and give it back to the people who invested in me.
Exactly. Okay. And that was super important because it made it easier to be able to raise that money knowing that I was just for a short window and knowing that I had a clear exit. And so to answer your question, the first 3 deals that I did, I partnered with a buddy of mine. And we actually got, and I'll say what I did. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but we did it and it worked out and it got me started. So, because this was back in 2004, right? So I was able to get a credit card advance for 0% APR for a year, took that money, bought the property, renovated it, put a tenant in there, and then went to the bank to get a mortgage. And with that mortgage, ended up paying back, with the refinance, paid off the credit card.
All right. And during that time, that was very easy to do. It was the right time to take that strategy.
Yeah.
So you bought a house, you turned it into a rental.
Yes.
And then it sounds like you did that 3 times. And then what was next after that?
So after that, I had a portfolio, a small portfolio, but I had a portfolio and proven results. So I then started just really like through my network, raising more money for more deals. So initially it was, when I say my money from, the line of credit, you could say from the credit card. But then as I wanted to do more deals, I went out and raised money from investors that wanted to get involved in real estate, but just didn't have the time or the knowledge to be able to do that. So I said, hey, I'll do the work. I'll find the deal. I'll do all this. And you put up the money.
And I'm guessing there are a lot of people out there in that situation who have money and no time and who want to make a return on their investment.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is one way for others to get involved in real estate is to go look for those types of people. Although if it's your first deal, they're probably not as willing to invest in you as if you've already shown success. And in this case, it only took 3 deals to show success and that you knew the system.
Yeah, it's without a doubt, when you have absolutely no track record, it's always going to be harder. But I've seen people even without a track record, be able to go out and raise money, which again goes back to doing your due diligence, having a strategy, putting a team together, because at the end of the day, investing is not just about you.
So you bring up another thing. It's putting a team together. And when I talk to people and they ask me about real estate, that's what I always say to them. I go, do you have a team? And more often than not, they don't. They haven't thought that through to do that. What are the different types of people you had on your team, like position-wise?
So, we had everyone from the property manager to manage the properties. We had the contractor to renovate the properties. We had the realtor to help find the deals. We had the insurance agent to, insure them. We had the banker to fund them.
So let's focus on the contractors. One of the things I've noticed is when you do deals, a lot of times the cost of all of these different people make it difficult to be profitable. So how do you find a team that can still make the deal profitable, or how do you find the deal maybe that makes it all profitable?
Yeah, that's a great point. And to your point, right? It could be maybe you're able to find a great deal that you pick up at a big discount, so you have a little bit more room to spend on the construction. Or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you've got a good deal, but you've got a tight construction budget. And then you're really managing the conversation with the contractors to make sure that they're going to be able to come in with under budget. And I think that the biggest thing, especially with new investors, is they don't have contingencies oftentimes. So like anytime you're doing a renovation project, you need to have a line item in there for contingency, because it's Murphy's Law. Stuff happens, stuff goes wrong. And so again, I know I keep saying this, and I guess it's a repeating theme, but of like doing your due diligence ahead of time, structuring things to set yourself up for success. One of the ways that you do that is you've got to build in a contingency for the what if factor. And if the deal still pencils out, or even if you break even with the what if factor, at least you're not in a situation where you're going to be negative or losing money.
And that's important. We don't want to spend this time and effort to lose money.
That's right.
How large of a contingency factor do you put into a deal?
So it depends, but I mean, a rule, just a rough idea, I'd say 10% of the construction costs. And depending on the project, it could be more, it could be less, but 10% a rough number you could use.
I think that's the number we use when we flip houses. We do about 10%. First, we mark everything up. Then we add 10%.
Exactly.
Because if the deal's got that much room, you can screw up and still come out ahead. And there's times that that's happened, and we still do all right.
Well, I think that's a great point that you bring up there, because that's how I look. When I have a deal that I think is a good deal, I try to beat up that deal so that I almost make it look like a bad deal or like it's not going to work. And if I can't do that, or even if I do all those things to be on the conservative side and it still works out, like, you got a good deal. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, right? But just coming at it from a conservative standpoint, and again, allocating for those what if scenarios as much as you can.
And I think that's what the beginner doesn't always think through, is thinking forward and making sure they do that.
Yep.
So now, after you had some time in real estate, you were involved in real estate education as well.
Yes.
So what was that all about?
So one, education just runs in my family. My mom's a teacher, my aunts and uncles, teachers, principals. I actually used to work for the Board of Ed in New York as an assistant teacher, para, for a while. And I've just always been super passionate about financial education. And right after I bought my first 4 properties my senior year of school, I started leading a weekend seminar called How to Buy Your First Investment Property, because that was the only thing I was able to talk about, because I had done that. And it really just started from there. And I'd lead the weekend seminars. We do them a few times a year. And after a while, people would start coming up to me and say, "Hey, we're loving the seminars, but I want some more support. Like, would you coach me one-on-one?" And for a while I said, "No, I can't do that. I can't do that." But then eventually I finally said, "Okay, let's give it a try." And so started coaching, one-on-one with students, and I loved it. I mean, they were having success. I was getting paid for it, and I was also getting tremendous fulfillment out of it. But obviously the downside to that when you're coaching is it's your time, right? So it's like trading time for dollars. And I got into real estate to not do that, right? I got into real estate to create passive income, to create wealth. And so I said, well, I still want to do the coaching, but I don't want to keep trading time for dollars. And then that's when I'd say really at that point, I kind of transitioned, I'd call it, into the educational game and created courses around it and books and audios and stuff like that.
Do you still have the courses and books and audios, or are you no longer involved in that?
I still have them. They're not up for sale publicly anywhere, but I still got them.
Well, that's what I meant. You don't actively sell them or market them anymore. You got out of that entirely, I guess.
Yeah, I got out of that a while ago. Yep.
Okay. And it was just basically a time for money type of a...
It was a time for money type of thing. And then for me, I'd say the reason that I ended up getting out of it was my view, or what I thought that industry or space would look like from the outside, was very different when I got into it. And when I got into it, my goal was to really make a difference and empower people in their financial futures. And I wanted to do that by helping them invest in real estate. And at least for me, with the customers that I attracted, what I found was they had, I'll call it personal financial issues that really was at the source of their problems. And they were trying to jump into real estate to make the quick buck or whatever the case may be. And, I just realized for the people that were coming through the door, I wasn't the best person to help them out with the personal financial issues, because I really wanted to talk about the wealth creation side and the real estate side. And so for me, after a while and trying to figure that out, I just said, you know what? I think it's time for me to do something else.
So people need to have their financial house in order first.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, and that helps with getting a loan too.
It sure does. It sure does.
And you said something else. You said passive income. And everyone talks about passive income. I know on the internet, it's, sell books and courses, passive income. You do this, real estate, passive income. I don't find real estate to be passive income. You have to work. And I think that's a part of, I don't know if people have the right mindset going in. I think they think, if I go into a rental, I buy a house and I rent it and the checks keep coming and no one ever calls me and I don't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. And so I know they say real estate's passive income, but I don't know that I agree with that. I think you have to do work. You're working every day in real estate. It's not exactly passive.
Absolutely. Look, without a doubt, it's like anything. I view it as building a business, right? And at the end of the day, as you said, you're working in that business. You're the operator in that business. You're managing things. You're getting it going, and it takes time to set that up and get that going. But if you're able to do that right, it is something that you can then shift to have it be passive. But it takes time, and I think it also depends on sort of the scale and what you wanna be able to do with it.
So within real estate, there's a multitude of different ways to get involved. Can we just explore some of the different ways to get involved and then maybe a plus or minus on each one, and maybe even what type of person it best suits? Sure. So up front, I think the two biggest everyone knows about is flipping houses and renting houses. So starting with renting houses, I see these things and it sounds to me like sometimes you hear these ads and you go buy a rental house and day one, you're walking out of closing with $100 in your pocket and it's cash flow positive and you can stop working tomorrow. Is that true?
So it can be, and it also cannot be, right? Depends on the deal, depends on, all that stuff. So look, I think the pros of that is that it can produce some good cash flow for you. It's not something you're going to become rich off of overnight, but it can produce some cash flow. It can create wealth. And I think the biggest benefit of owning rental real estate are the tax benefits that you get from that.
For depreciation against your income.
Yeah. I mean, when I buy a piece of real estate and rental real estate, I always view that basically as tax-free money. Because once you have your depreciation, I mean, it's for the most part, it's tax-free or super low taxed, and then if someone's in the 30-40% tax bracket, that's a big savings.
Absolutely. So what are some of the downfalls of rental real estate?
Well, some of the downfalls are you have to deal with tenants, right? And so things happen. There are repairs. There's, things that pop up. There are vacancies. So I think the downfall is sometimes you think about, it's going to make me money every month. Well, if you have a big repair or if you have a vacancy, do you have a reserve to cover your expenses if for some reason, the property isn't producing money that month? And I think people don't think about that enough.
What do you use for percentages for repairs and reserve?
I'm trying to see what the percentage is.
So let's just say I buy a $100,000 house. I want to rent it for $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Off of that are taxes and then insurance. And then what would I budget for a vacancy rate in a given year?
So, I mean, I'd say for vacancy, so typically just off the top, real quick, for operating expenses, it's usually 30% of the rental income. and then another 5% for vacancy. So you got 35% of the top between operational expenses and vacancy. And then you have your debt service payment if you have a loan on the property.
And taxes and insurance, or is that in operations?
Taxes and insurance, yeah, would be in operations.
So they'd be part of the 35%. All right.
Right.
So people can sit down, do some math, and see if at the end of the day, after they pay their debt service, there's money left.
Yep.
And they'll have to look at it from that side. Okay. Next thing is flipping houses. So the good thing about flipping a house is you have a set time frame. You're in, you're out. What would be, I guess the advantages of flipping a house is you make money.
And if you're doing it right, you'll make a nice lump sum of money on that flip. So
Downsides of a flip.
downside again, right? It goes back to that what if factor, right? What if the property you thought was going to take 6 months to sell or from beginning to end takes 9 months or 11 months? Do you have the money to carry that property for the additional time? What if construction runs over? What if the market turns and you thought you were going to get 300 for it, but now you can only sell it for 275? Are you still going to be able to make money? So, I think those are a few of the downside scenarios where you could either lose money or maybe make less money than you thought if stuff takes longer than you expect.
And when I sit down and I talk to people about flipping, more often than not, I don't think they calculate all the costs. They forget the selling costs. They forget carrying costs. They forget all the little stuff. It's, the dumpster's $500, the electric bill every month, 6 months of electric, 6 months of heat, 6 months of mowing the lawn or getting snow shoveled. You still have to do all of that in there. And I don't think people sit down and go through all the costs as well as they should.
I would agree with that. Certainly the carrying costs and on the selling costs. I think most people are doing the analysis of, 6% to a realtor, but I think oftentimes what they miss is seller assist. Are you giving 3% or up to 6% assist? That's 3 to 6% of your sales price. If you're not accounting for that, depending on what your exit price is, that could be, a good amount of your profit.
Very true. And the other thing I find is I think people think they can sell the house for more than they can, or they over improve the house and they get outside of the market and they're not going to get the return they expected.
Absolutely. I think the best advice I would give on that is you want to get in and get out. So if properties are selling for 400,000, I'd look at it. All right, can I sell it for 390? And still this way, as soon as I list it, it gets picked up, it gets sold. You don't need to maximize your profit on every single deal that you're doing.
And that's the way we do it. We usually underprice in the market so that I know that I can sell it quick and move on to the next deal. I'm not sitting here with an empty house that's costing me money.
Yep.
So there's other things in real estate people can do. Wholesaling is probably one way to get involved that requires essentially, I guess, no risk. Right. Great learning game because you'll see what other people think about your numbers. So can you explain exactly what a wholesaler is and how they're successful?
Yeah. So a wholesaler is someone that puts a property under contract, let's say for 100, and they've got a buyer that's willing to pay 120 for it. So let's say, Rocky, you're the seller. I'm going to go sign the agreement of sale with you for $100,000. And then Jeff over here, I know, is willing to pay $120,000 for it. And I have 30 days to close, but I don't have any money. So that's why I need to make sure that Jeff is going to be able to close within those 30 days so that I don't have to come to the table with money. And that difference there between what Jeff's willing to pay for it and what I have it under contract for, that $20,000, that's what gets paid to me as the wholesaler. And that's my profit.
So you make profit essentially without risk. I guess just so people understand better, why wouldn't Jeff just go find the house for $100,000?
It takes time and it takes skill to be able to acquire deals and volume at discounts.
And that's one of our biggest holdups. We can't find enough deals in enough time to be able to invest in them.
Yeah. And to elaborate on that, wholesalers, for those that are in that business, these guys are full-time marketers. They're great marketers. They're spending money on direct mail pieces. They're knocking on doors. They're flyers. They're doing, spending money marketing online. So there's a whole business in and of itself to generate that type of deal flow.
And I've dealt with some, and I see that quite clearly. So there's a skill set for a marketer, someone who's good at that, who's got time. So if you're young and you've got all this time, it's a way to get involved. And then there's other skill sets where another person might have handy skills, the construction skill set, so they can do that. You may have another person who's got the financial backing, and so they've got another skill set and assets, so they could get involved. There are something called hard money lenders.
Yep.
So what are hard money lenders?
So hard money lenders are different than a conventional bank in the sense they don't have all the rules and regulations that a bank does. And essentially, they're going to fund a lot quicker and it's going to be a lot easier to work with them. But they're also going to charge you a lot more than a bank is going to charge you.
So what does a hard money lender generally charge?
So I'd say hard money, you're looking at anywhere from 2 points up to 6 points. And then an interest rate of 12% up to 16, 18%.
So 2 points to 6 points means right off the top, you're going to pay them. A point would be $1,000 on 100,000. Yep. So if I'm buying $100,000 house, if I pay 3 points, I got to pay 3,000 up front.
Correct.
And then I'm paying an interest rate 12 to plus. So you have to sit down and calculate that into your business plan and know if you can afford it. Now, on the other hand, if you've got money and you want to lend it out, 12% and 2 points sounds a lot better than my CD at the bank.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So for someone lending, what are the risks to the person lending money?
So the biggest risk is you want to make sure that your principal is going to be returned to you, right? I mean, yes, you want to make money, but you always want a preservation of principal. So you want to make sure that the guy or gal that you're lending money to is a good and responsible operator, right? So if it's a construction project, do they have the skill set and the ability to be able to complete that construction project so that you can get paid off? So I'd say one, it's, making sure you've got a good borrower and operator. And then two, making sure that you know the numbers and the valuations of the property so that you're giving yourself some room there. So if a property is worth $100,000 as a lender, probably not a good idea to lend out $100,000 because you have absolutely no equity there, right? Anything goes wrong with the deal or whatever the case may be, or even worse, if you have to foreclose and take it back, you're in the hole from the get-go.
Is there a certain percentage they like to stay below?
I mean, I'd say for that, the most is probably going to be 70% of the value. For us, with our business, we're typically 60%, sometimes up to 65% of the value.
All right. So you still have to bring money to the table if you were looking to do these kinds of deals on as far as borrowing from those.
And not necessarily. There are actually some lenders out there that, will lend it solely on the asset and don't require you to bring money to the table. That's not something that we do, because when you look at the default rates and the majority of them, it's those. Look, it's just, think about it. If someone has no skin in the game and stuff gets tough and stuff hits the fan, what's their reasoning or likelihood to stay in the deal? It's a lot easier to walk away when you have no skin in the game.
Very true. So what are any other areas that people could get involved in real estate?
Well, you could become a real estate agent. There's a handful of, investors I know that wanted to invest, but they thought, a good place to start out was as a real estate agent, and they built their real estate agent business and then ended up, transferring over, or in addition to that business, got involved investing in properties as well.
Plus, it puts you at the front line. When the deals are up, you get to talk to a lot of different people. Yep. You can work with investors and flippers and renters, and you get to learn about the market and make money.
Exactly.
And so it's one possible way to do that. I actually did that in college. I had my realtor's license when I was in college. I sold a house.
There you go. I didn't know that. See that? Okay.
I've got, it's funny because I really didn't start investing in real estate till about 5 years ago. However, I have about 30 years of real estate experience. I know how to fix things, how to, how to do all of the work. And I've done all the work from plumbing to electrical. I put roofs on houses. I've sold houses. So I had all the knowledge. I just didn't use it, which is a whole nother issue.
Well, hold on. So now I want to ask you a question. I know you're the one asking the questions, but so what shifted from 30 years, but just the last 5 you've been investing? What was the thing that had you shift or finally say, all right, I'm diving in here and investing?
It's 2011. I lost a lot of money in the stock market. And I said, let me see if I can lose some money in real estate. And I was like, I should buy rental real estate. And I was talking with somebody, and it's like you always talk about things, you never do them. And I was talking to them at dinner one night and said, I'd like to buy rental real estate. I'd like to rent it out and do this stuff. And this person said, oh, that's interesting. We hate the place we're renting. Let me think about this. I said, okay. 2-3 months later, I get a phone call from them. They go, we want to take you up on your offer. We'd like you to buy a place for us to live in and rent. And I'm like, oh, I guess I have to do something now. Right? So let's go. And at that point, I called up the realtor. I said, find me every house on the market that's been on sale for over 180 days. Find me a distressed situation. I didn't know about foreclosures. I didn't know about all these other things. Go find me a distressed situation that I can find for a deal. I did horrible numbers. It wasn't the greatest, but it worked out. I got a renter. They helped me because they wanted to live there. So they painted the place. They helped do a lot of the work. I got in, I got my feet wet. And once I got my feet wet, it was like, oh, I can do this. Let's just start cranking it out. And so that's how the rental started. And then the flip started because we were at the bottom of the market then, and deals were coming up, and we kept looking at house after house after house. And finally, I think there was one house that we saw, we put a lowball offer in on, and it was, we can't get hurt on this deal. We could screw it up entirely and we can't get hurt. Let's do it. And so that's how the flipping business started. And then I learned to build a team and to trust others and do all of that. And so that's how that all came about. Now it's all easy.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes people make in real estate?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is not sticking with what they know to do. And as an example, as an investor, you always want deals, right? You're always looking for more deals. Well, what happens when you're putting offers in, you're not getting deals, because maybe the market's hot and you keep losing out. There's a tendency, or it's easy to start maybe manipulating the numbers a little bit here or there, so that, well, maybe I'll make a little bit less money so I could pay a little bit more. Or, what if you open up a pro forma to run your numbers and do an analysis? It's amazing where you can tweak one line item and all of a sudden the deal pencils out and it works, right? But you kind of tweak that a little bit just to make it work. So I think it's the self-control and discipline to have your strategy, know your numbers, stick with it, and don't fudge things to make things work that don't really work.
Deluding ourselves.
Yes.
We do that a lot.
We do.
So we're going to shift gears in a second because we're going to talk about a lot of those things. Before we do that, I just want to say one thing. The maximum in real estate is the money is made when you buy the property.
Exactly.
And I don't think everyone thinks that way. You've got to buy it at the right price and the right discount so that you cover for all the mistakes and everything else. Yeah. And people need to realize that. And that's what we just talked about, is making sure you have the correct purchase price.
Right. It's exactly what you just said when you shared your story, right? You said that deal came across where you looked at it, it was like, no matter what I did, I could not lose money on that deal, right? It's like, and you knew that when you were buying it.
I did.
Yep.
I like to run the numbers, and then I like to be pessimistic. I'm super, super pessimistic when we buy property.
And that right there is, and I consider myself a very optimistic person. And when I view deals, though, I put on that lens of pessimism to try to beat that deal up. What if all these things go wrong and bad? Does the deal still pencil out? And if you look at the most successful investors, that's what they do. I think about, right? We read Tony Robbins' book, Money, right? Where he was interviewing, the most successful investors in there. All those guys up and down, all they look for is how can this deal go wrong? How can it go bad? And how can I protect my downside? And if they get comfortable with that, then they put the chips on the table and move forward.
Managing your risks.
Yes.
So speaking of books, that's how we met.
That's right.
We were in a book club together.
Yeah.
How many books did you read last year?
I read 47 books last year.
47. You have me beat. I think I was close to 30. So quite impressive. Why do you read books?
I love learning. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm just an avid learner. I love expanding my knowledge, my context, what's possible. And in particular, what I love most about books is reading books that are actionable and that I can implement either in my life or my business. So not reading. So look, sometimes you read books just because it's a good read or you learn something, a good theory, but I love when I can read about a concept or an idea or a way to improve something and then go ahead and implement that and test that and experiment with that.
So is there a particular process you use to pick the next book you're going to read or pick books, or do you just find stuff that's interesting and say, I'm going to read this book and in here I'm going to find a nugget and implement it?
I'd say when I'm looking at books and choosing books, I'd say the first question I ask for myself is, what is the next book that I can read that would make a big difference for me that I could implement and, implement something from that, some nugget or two. And look, sometimes that doesn't always happen, but it's funny. Sometimes I actually feel pressure. It's like, oh, what's the, there's so many good books out there, right? It's like, well, what is the biggest book that would make the biggest difference that I could read now?
Not always easy.
No.
I know I have a stack. And
yeah.
It seems like another book gets put on top of the stack and some get pushed way down, unfortunately. So much time. But yet you found the time to do that. And you're purposeful and intentional in that.
Yes.
Throughout this entire conversation, it seems that that is an underlying theme. And I think in life, when you are purposeful and intentional, when you know what you're doing, why you're going, where you're going, it makes it so much easier to get there. If you have clear direction, if you know what the target is, then it's a question of what can I do to get to that target? What are the possibilities? You've actually taken a lot of different programs. Mm-hmm. You've been in a lot, I call seminars, masterminds, a whole host of different things. Could you share some of those and maybe why people should do that? And also, if you don't mind sharing some of the costs, so people realize that in order to be successful, in order to do things, you have to invest in yourself. And clearly books, the first cheapest alternative to do that. But we don't always read a book and take the next step. And sometimes, even if we read the book, there are things that we don't understand that we could if we actually had someone next to us. My classic example is, I can read all the books on golf in the world, and I'm not going to still be able to swing that club.
Yeah.
So share some of your experiences and different things that you've learned.
Well, I think for me, it's always started with a premise of just wanting to be the best. And again, this sounds cliche as well. I mean, these cliches, but, be the best person I could be, right? So how do you do that? Just, personal improvement, growth and development. And so, I don't know, it's always sort of been my nature, whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm always looking at how I can take it to the next level, whether it be as an investor, whether it be as a friend, now a father, whatever the case may be. And so I feel like with personal growth and self-development, there's like a commonality there that whatever I learn and take from those experiences, I can apply to all aspects of my life. And it's kind of interesting. If you think at the things that you do, what are the things that you do in your life that you can learn from that can impact all areas of your life, not just one? And so for me, I've found that through, education, workshops. So some of the work that I've done that have made huge difference. I spoke about Tony Robbins before. I've gone to Tony Robbins events, which have been, absolutely amazing. Landmark Education and the Landmark Forum and a lot of the programs there. It's actually, that's where I met my wife. Man, of course, now drawing a blank on some of the...
I think you strategic coach.
Oh, strategic coach. Yep. Yeah. Strategic coach is more centered around business, but yep, I've been in strategic coach now for, my goodness, I think it's about 5 years, which has been, it's amazing as I look back at it, like the shifts that I've had in my life and business, and even sort of repositioning the roles, going back to real estate and the different roles that you can play. I've played a lot of them. And I feel like strategic coach really helped me hone in on what they call your unique ability, that thing that you're best at, that you can do, that gives you more and more energy when you do it.
And I think that's something people struggle with, because when you have a unique ability, you inherently don't think it's unique and you don't think it's an ability. You just think everyone can do this because it's so easy.
Right.
How could someone struggle with this?
Yeah.
How do you figure out your unique ability?
Well, going back to books, I'll give a book recommendation. There's a book called Unique Ability by Catherine. I'm drawing a blank on her last name now, but there's a book called Unique Ability, and it actually walks you through, exercises to sort of discover your unique ability. And it's something, it's not static, it's dynamic, right? It's sort of always, changing it's not like this fixed thing that this is my unique ability and that's it. But there's a book called Unique Ability. And then also, again, the tools and stuff in Dan Sullivan's Strategic Coach program, they go into unique ability a lot.
You also mentioned Landmark. So what was it that you learned through Landmark that helped you?
So a couple things, but I think one of the first things that I took from from the forum that I did there was, I actually, at that time, and it's kind of sad to say this, but I actually thought that I could never authentically be satisfied and content, because I thought if I was ever like satisfied and content, that I would lose my motivation to do these great things or to take things to the next level. And so one of the things that was huge for me that I got in the Landmark Forum was I got that I had that collapse, then I was actually able to distinguish that I can be happy and content in each moment and still choose to do whatever I want to do, take things to the next level and this or that. And so as I'm saying it probably sounds simple, but it's a huge paradigm shift for myself and my life and how I live my life of I can be happy and content in each moment and still choose to do whatever, those things that I want to do.
And we talk about those. Those are the voices in our head that, that prevent us from doing the things we want to do, that hold us back. The internal psychology. And then there's also the external psychology. Tony Robbins is very good at that. I think So what did you get out of Tony Robbins?
Man, there's a few things, but I'd say the biggest thing that I got out of Tony Robbins was being able to impact, he talks a lot about getting into state, right? And your physiological state, and just understanding that when you change your physiology, that impacts your other states. And that's kind of like the easiest way to change things. So as an example, right? Like if I'm, really tired and I'm in whatever, just a tired state or whatever the case may be, the easiest way for me to get energy is to change my physiology. So I'm talking in the mic here, but I'm kind of hunched over, but you lean back, you lift it, and all of a sudden your voice changes, right? It changes your other states when you change your physiology.
It's very interesting. I haven't done Tony Robbins. I've seen some of his stuff. I have to spend a little more time learning about that.
I'm thinking of reviewing it again in July, so I'll let you know if you want to join.
Oh, he's in New York in July.
In Jersey, yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
I think I might have blocked those dates out of my calendar.
For that?
I put it on the calendar.
Okay.
Because I knew it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to hold these dates. I haven't made a decision of whether I'm going.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm at least going to put the dates on the calendar and see what it is. I have a whole bunch of different things on the calendar ready for a variety of other programs I'm going to.
Right.
So it was just, There's a placeholder there.
All right. Well, we should talk.
We will talk about that.
Yeah.
So you'll be going back again through that.
I want to. I haven't registered for it yet, but I've been talking. My wife hasn't done it, so I want her to experience it and do it together. So
that's neat. Yeah. I might take my wife too.
Okay. Well, all right. We need to make this happen.
I could take the kids. They could watch your daughter.
Hey, there you go.
That's pretty neat. So it sounds like you're intentional in what you do. You've got bigger goals. You've got the picture for what you want to do with your life. And by doing all of these things, by taking the time to study, by taking the time to sit down and write everything out, it sounds like you're able to live the life you want, achieve the goals you want, and you're happy and thrilled. Does that sum it up well?
It's interesting hearing you say that, but yeah, I would say it does. And it's super grateful for, just the life I have, the relationships I have, the business I have. And it is intentional. Look, not everything always works out the way you want it to. And there's a lot of things that have taken me a lot longer than I thought or than I wanted to. But yeah.
And that's something we haven't touched on. I'm going to do a whole episode on failure. I'm going to get on the microphone and tell you about all my failures. I have lots of them.
Me too.
That'll be coming up. So the question isn't then, so what do you do? I mean, and I think my point for that is we're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. Yeah. The question is do those failures hold you back from doing it again or taking the step forward? So how do you overcome your failures? How do you not let them hold you back?
Well, I think a lot of it is context. So I have it, if you let your failures hold you back, then like you've lost. If you let your failures hold you back, you've lost. And so the only way to win is to just not let it stand in your way. Just keep, you're clear on what you want to do. And the game's not over until you say, right? And if you give in, you're saying it's over and you've lost.
That's true. And most successful people have lost many times and had many failures along the way.
And not only that, it's whatever you end up doing, you're reinforcing that, right? So if you give up once and you say you've lost, next time you go out, it's going to be easier to give up again and lose. Whereas on the flip side, if you lose and you say, you know what, I'm getting back up again and I'm going out there, the next time you face an obstacle or you face a failure, it's easier you're like, hey, I remember that happened last time, but I picked myself up and, look how that turned out.
That's very true. And I think that goes across all parts of our life. If we have success in one area, it carries over to success in other areas. When you can win here, then you start to win everywhere. And what I try to tell people is to look for the smallest win. Take the smallest step, have the smallest win, and just start on your journey to constantly being able to do that.
And that's perfect that you said that, because I think, in those moments of when your back's up against the wall and you're choosing, what do I do here? Sometimes when you look at things in the grand scheme of things and big picture, it just seems overwhelming and sort of what's the point? And so I think sort of combining what we said, if you're someone that's, in that sort of moment where you need to make a choice, just tell yourself, if I push forward or, move forward in the way that I want to, it's a small win because it's going to make it easier the next time I'm faced with that choice. If I choose in this moment to, continue to pick myself back up and move forward, the next time it comes, it's going to be easier. And that's a small win. And sometimes when you're in the middle of those moments, you need to talk yourself into it to move forward.
Voices in your head.
Exactly.
They keep coming back.
Yeah.
So last area we'll talk on, I haven't done much in this area of parenting and raising great kids.
What do you mean you haven't done it? Of course you have.
No, I've done it. I haven't talked about it. I haven't done any podcasts yet. No. We haven't. We're going to talk a little bit more about parenting and raising financially savvy, well-driven kids who go out and make their own mark in the world. So we're going to do that in a future episode. My question to you is, have you thought, you have a Jade's a month old,
Yeah,
roughly?
she's 7 weeks.
7 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. She wasn't smart enough to come out a couple hours early,
I know.
right? To
I
make
lost
that
my tax deduction. She was born on January 1st. Yeah.
So have you thought of plans, or you have intentionality in
Oh.
how you're going to raise her?
Absolutely. I mean, I have, and I think that's probably what I get most excited about as being a parent. And let me take a step back too, and that's why when you were talking about, you're someone that I look to as a role model for that, parenting. Just even from the conversations. Actually, I haven't met your kids, right? But just the way you talk about your kids and your family, and again, going back to intentionality and the things that you do with your family and with your kids. Yeah, it's inspiring, and I could tell like just everything about that. It's like, I want to incorporate that into, how I raise my child. So thank you.
I'll share a lot of secrets with you after the mics.
Awesome.
And we'll share those with others too. Not to worry. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to talk about or share with the audience and let them know about?
I think, and maybe I'll just kind of reiterate, because I think we sort of touched on these 2 points, but I think the biggest things for me, yes, we mentioned being intentional, but also going back to, mentors, right? And finding people, if there's something that you want to do. I'm a big advocate of, finding those people that are doing that and follow them, learn from them, shadow them. As Tony Robbins says, model them, because it just accelerates your learning curve tremendously.
So let's just touch base on that real quickly, because I think people say, how do I find a mentor? And there's a couple easy ways, right? One is a book, because you can always learn from somebody. 2, you can pay and go watch Tony. Yeah. But I think there's other ways, and I think people don't realize how easy it is to reach out to somebody, say like yourself, who's successful in real estate, and say, hey, can you help me? Have you reached out to people who were further along with you and just cold reached out to them, or did you do warm? How did you find your mentors?
Both. I mean, I've done it both ways. It's been, sort of cold calling or just cold reaching out to them. Look, if you can get a warm introduction somehow, I'd say that's always the preferred method, right? If you know someone that knows that person that can introduce you, that's certainly better than doing it cold. But if you don't have that, don't let that stop you. You've got to do it cold. I mean, I've walked up to people that I've seen at events or whatever that, I've never met them before, but I saw them there, or I knew that they were going to be at that event, and just go up and introduce myself and, lay it out there. And it's not just, again, going back to being intentional, it's not just, hey, can you, I'm looking for this and how can you help me? You got to be thinking about what's in it for them too, right? Is there a way, or are there any ways that you can provide some value for them? Or even if you can't, maybe there's a connection that you have. You may not know that when you go up and introduce yourself and talk to them, but I think that's the other piece is sometimes we get too caught up in ourselves as what I need or what's in it for me. And you want to make sure that you're keeping in mind the other person on the other side, what can you do for them as well?
And I think that was the start of the relationships podcast when we talked about that. It's the Zig Ziglar thing. Help enough people get what they want, and you will have everything you want. So I think you reiterated that works.
Exactly.
So if people want to find you, how do they find you? Where are you located? What's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, the best way would be just to go to my website, which is legacycapitalpa.com. And our phone number's on there, or there's a contact form if you want to shoot us an email.
All right, great. And they can invest with you for real estate. And are there other services that you provide that people should know about?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on there and be more than happy to have a conversation with them about it. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rocky.
As you heard, Doug is quite intentional in his life choices. He has mentors, belongs to masterminds, and spends a lot of time improving himself by attending programs, and has read over 40 books just last year on his journey to 1,000. I know Doug lives the principles we talk about here at Richer Soul, and I'm thankful he was able to share how he does it, along with some great information about the different ways to get started in real estate. If you've not already checked out Bigger Pockets to learn about real estate, I highly recommend it. We're going to have some other great guests in the coming weeks, along with some other shows digging deeper into topics. If you know of anyone who can benefit, please share the episode and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can always check us out at richersoul.com. I would also love to hear feedback from you. My email is rocky@richersoul.com. Your challenge for this week is to find one area of your life to be intentional in and take the time to think it through, explore some of the program's books, and search out some mentors. There's some links in the show notes to learn about real estate, finding your unique ability, and also to reach out to Doug. Enjoy your week.